Right, hello and welcome to my new gallery and workshop. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Isabel. I've been hand making jewellery for about 16 years now. And I've very recently opened a gallery and a workshop in East Dulwich in South London. Now this, rather than a virtual event, this was meant to be a big opening party with all the bells and whistles, but things being what they are, we've decided instead we'll just make fools of ourselves online, which is always a good idea anyway. Tonight's all about introducing the wonderful goldsmiths whose work, or who very kindly agreed to have their work on show in the gallery and are now guinea pigs for our first ever live event. And tonight I'm joined by Amanda Lee Hope, Anne of Ox Jewellery, Graham McComb, Emily Thatcher and Chris Boland. And I think we're going to talk to Amanda first. And there she is. Hello, Amanda.
Hello, hello.
Unmute.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Amanda, we shared a workshop in Hatton Garden for about 2 years. And thankfully she still talks to me. So very happy to have her pieces in the shop. And yeah, so tell us, how did you get into jewellery making?
You're muted.
You're muted.
No, sorry. Anyway, hi again. I'm so sorry. But first I wanted to congratulate you, Isabel, on opening your shop. And thank you for inviting me and all of us to be a part of it. How did I get into jewelry making? Well, first, this is a second career for me. I first was an architect. Being creative, I studied architecture and thought it was the right career path. But as soon as I started practicing and qualified, I realized that the practice of architecture was very different from studying. And I missed the making and the engagement with the materials, making it myself instead of telling others how to do it or what to do, and being able to engage with clients directly. It's been great.
Yeah, you've mentioned materials, and looking at your jewellery, I think the first thing that comes to mind to me is the opal necklace, which I have in the shop. And it's 2 different colour golds, so it's 18 karat yellow gold and 18 karat, would you call it rose or pink gold for the setting for the opal?
Rose, red.
Red. And it's all handmade. It's in fair trade gold with responsibly sourced stones. Tell us all about it.
Tell us all about it. Well, I am, as you said, it's made of fair trade gold. So the materials I use, it's really important if I can source them from the mine directly, which I can with fair trade gold, and whenever possible with the gemstones. So that opal is sourced directly from Queensland, Australia, and the diamonds, they're cognac diamonds, also straight from Australia, and fully traceable. So that's important whenever possible to do. Yeah, so that whole necklace is traceable.
Yeah. But it's not just the fact that, say, the yellow gold matches the warmth of the cognac diamonds, but you've got pink flashes in the opal, and the red gold of the setting references that. So that's a bespoke alloy if you want.
Correct. That's right. So yeah, that's right. So I learned to alloy my own gold. I was very lucky to be in a jewelry studios where there were other jewelers who were willing to share their knowledge. So I make my own alloys in all the carats. So with that particular opal, I just really wanted to bring out the pinks and the reds in that because it's such a rare color against the blue. So I formulated that alloy, that red gold, to go and bring out that color. Yes.
So, do you have favorite materials, or is it
Oh,
just
wow.
a
Yeah,
kind of?
I brought this out. My favorite material is raw gold. Can you see? So that's fair trade, pure gold, and I love working with it from its pure materials and mixing it with other metals to create different alloys, different colors. So definitely raw gold, raw metal, and then pairing it with beautiful gemstones. So I'm not particular, but diamonds probably. Yeah, diamonds would be my top choice.
Well, they do sparkle, so
Yeah.
fair play, right? And the other thing because of course I take your jewellery out every night, I put it back in the cabinet in the morning, and so I look at it. Your start in architecture has influenced your designs, I think. So you've got really clean lines. You've got recurring themes, so we've got the X's, and you've got a matching ring, the X ring, aptly named, which I think actually works best when worn. And I own one myself, so I would know. I wear it. But yeah, can you tell us a bit more about what influences the designs, or how your design process works, really?
Well, I think what influences me is definitely the built environment. So how things are put together, whether it's different materials and how different materials interact with each other or even hold. For example, how pliable metal will hold a precious gemstone that could break, like a window frame in a piece of glass. So details like that, textures, and in terms of design process, I'd say it's the beautiful materials I work with and trying to get the design brief that I might have. So a brief either that I've set for myself that I want to show off a range of rose to red golds, or a brief that my client set me, and then.
Yeah. So it's not just I always start with this, but the kind of the brief determines the way you then design.
Yeah.
And just while again, I would say architecture definitely has that design element to it, but as you said, you're not making, you're telling other people what they could maybe possibly do if they were that way inclined. So what fascinated you about jewellery, was there anything other than the actually getting your hands dirty and getting stuck into it?
I think it's the scale. What fascinates me? Well, the beautiful materials. I think it's the intrinsic value of materials that you're working with. Um, so that and yeah, I think it's the fact that you're creating it's a mini problem solving in a way. When you have that brief, I created it, and then you make it with your own hands, and there it is, voila.
Yeah, and it's super rewarding, isn't it? So you start off with, in your case, quite literally, you start off with a few nuggets, but or you'd start off with a bit of 6mm rough rolled wire or sheet or whatever, and at the end of the day, you've got a beautiful piece that you can put on. So I think when I was sharing the studio with you, I think we were both very much on the same page when it came to that kind of feeling rewarded at the end of the day. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to have a look at a few more of your pieces now, and thank you very much. Right, and next up we've got Anne from Ox Jewellery. Hi, Anne.
Hello, Isabel. Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching, and thank you for
Hello.
inviting me.
Oh, quite all right. Pleasure to have you. I like that I can see your tools behind you. That's really good.
Oh, yeah.
I should have said that earlier, really, shouldn't I? Everyone's in their own studios, so you can get an idea of what a jewellery maker's space looks like. Right, so tell us, Anne, how did you get into jewellery making?
I initially trained as a product designer, which a lot of people say is very apparent in my work, that you can actually see that.
Yep.
And then I also trained as a jewellery designer. But the reason why I changed is because I really miss the making, a bit similar to Amanda. Yeah, I wanted to make objects, and what I really like about the jewelry design is that you meet your clients, you design, you make. I sometimes do photography as well, work on my website. You get feedback from your clients, which is great. And as a product designer, that process is a lot longer. There's no direct contact with your clients that much, so it's a much more varied job, I say, the jewelry design.
I can totally see that. I mean, because you basically do everything from start to finish with, no middleman, so to speak. So I've got quite a few pieces of yours in the gallery, which I'm eternally grateful for. And I've just, looking at them, I find it really interesting that, of course, I knew your work before I started this gallery. But suddenly you look at something every day and it changes for you. And partly, some of it is new work or has evolved from something else. But also, there's a formality in your designs that takes confidence to wear and to pull off, I think. But at the same time, because you use a lot of sort of negative space in your designs, it gives it a lightness, and it doesn't look overbearing or overpowering in any way. And I think one of the really good examples for that is the Cantilever Ring, and I have a beautiful example of that. It's 18 karat yellow gold with a green, no, is it a party sapphire, isn't it?
Yeah. It's got green and yellow in there, I think.
Yeah. So tell me about those designs. Lightweight yet strong.
I'll tell you how I actually get to my designs, because that explains the ring in a way. That particular ring, I haven't used stones for that long, and I was looking at because I found this amazing party sapphire. I thought, well, I don't like traditional settings. I want to find another way to set the stone. For me, jewelry always has to be very comfortable. So I thought, well, actually, if the stone sits at the top, it's something that sticks out and can, sometimes not be so comfortable. So I thought the most obvious space for the stone to go is in that gap between your fingers.
Yeah.
And then it kind of sits flat. But a stone also has to, the light has to travel through it to show all the colours of the stone. So I thought, well, if I leave that space underneath the stone open, I'll show you this one here.
There we go.
You can actually see the stone from underneath. That's the one I'm wearing all the time. So the light still travels through it and it works as a setting, but it looks completely different, which is what is me as well.
It adds detail, doesn't it? So from the top, yes, you can see the shape of the ring, you can see the shape of the stone, but as soon as you move your hand and kind of look at it from a different angle, you're surprised. And it's not generally in sort of traditional gemstone set jewellery, you probably won't see the back of the stone because most people don't care. But I really like that. And I think another one of my favourite designs is the hematite, or well, the hematite earrings in this case, but you do them with lapis as well, don't you, or other beads? And again, the shape is pleasing, but I'm very much excited by the negative space and by the different angles the wire forms. So, yeah, tell us about those. Sorry.
I made a lot of, no, that's okay. I made a lot of designs encapsulating beads, and that actually originally started from making a ring which contained a pearl, which the wire went over to actually protect the pearl, because a pearl's a very fragile material. So these earrings are again encapsulating the bead, but then forming a bigger space. And those were kind of coming from this necklace, which, hang on, I need to see where the camera is.
Yeah.
So here I kind of wanted to create a bigger space around the beads, and you know, by layering them you can make the space really big and 3D. The earrings have a similar effect. If you turn them around from the sides, they become very different.
Yeah, and I like how the pieces change depending on what angle you view them from. So it's not one-dimensional, is I think what I'm trying to say badly.
Yeah.
So your design process, I mean, you just said these evolved from a pearl ring that was probably the first kind of, I'm not going to call it a prototype, but first design to be made, and then you look at that over the years, that evolves into something else. Or, I mean, I guess it depends on the piece how you work, but
yeah, I think as all of us as designers, the longer you work, the more inspiration you get, because you draw from previous pieces and you kind of build up a collection, and they give you new ideas by seeing people wear them. You know, it just evolves. Coming up with a completely new design is a little bit more difficult, but I guess the way I work with that is I just have a lot of scribbles from over the years, which I keep. They don't mean anything to anyone, they just mean something to me.
Is that sort of back of a napkin type thing?
Exactly. I never make any complete hand drawings because it doesn't make sense to me. As a product designer, I'm used to drawing on the computer, and especially with jewellery, everything needs to be really precise. So with a hand drawing, anything's possible, and then it might actually not work. So by drawing on the computer, I find it's more precise, and therefore I immediately know when things are going to work or not. And then to work it out, I often use CAD as a tool as well to make my jewellery, to 3D print.
Yeah, and that gives you models as well to kind of look at and take it from there, of course.
Yeah. For people who don't know what CAD is, it's computer-aided design. Sorry.
I was going to say, we know what we're talking about. That's perfectly fine, isn't it?
Text
and in terms of upcoming shows as well, that was something we wanted to talk about. You're doing Made Makers?
Yes, next weekend there's a virtual show which is called Made Makers Online. It's organised by Tutton and Young, who normally do the Made show in Marylebone in November or October. But they've been doing a monthly show, which is digital show, which is great.
We're all getting used to being online now. Happy days.
Exactly.
Right. Thank you so much, Anne.
Thank you, Isabel.
An absolute pleasure having your work here. We're going to look at a few more of your pieces now, I think. There we go. Right, and next up we have Graham here. There he is. Hello.
Hi, Isabel.
How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. And you?
Couldn't be any better. So, I mean, we've heard from two people, and they've both had completely different sort of starts into the whole jewellery making thing. And I'm always very curious to hear how people get into jewellery making, because it's not the easiest career path to choose ever. So can you tell us how you got into it?
Sure. I don't think it was under sort of any illusion that I was going to do anything else but go to art school to do something at which I actually thought I was going to do graphic design rather than anything else at that point. And so when I eventually got there and saw what graphic design actually was, I decided that really that wasn't my sort of intended path. And while looking around the art school, I came across the jewellery department, which, to be honest, wasn't even on my radar as a subject to study. And I was just really fascinated by these sort of beautiful, small-scale sculptural things that they were making in the department. And yeah, that just really appealed. And so I gave it a go at the end of the first year that I was studying. And it just felt entirely right. So yeah, 26, 30 years later, I'm still doing it.
Yeah, can't be that bad, right?
No, not at all.
And what is it? I mean, yes, you said miniature sculptures and obviously working with your hands. What fascinates you about jewellery?
I think that 3D element, and like someone else was saying, the actual creation of pieces from either raw nuggets of metal or sheet or wire, and creating some 3D form at the end of it is incredibly satisfying.
Yeah.
And ultimately, when a client comes in and starts to try things on, and you see it on somebody, it all completely makes sense, and it all, what was in your head is finally realized
Yeah.
when you see it on somebody,
Yeah.
which is great, and it's incredibly rewarding at the end of the day,
Yeah.
and a huge compliment as well when somebody actually purchases something.
Yeah.
So,
And appreciates the time and kind of
yeah.
blood, sweat and tears that go into a piece of jewellery.
Yeah, which they'll never actually see.
But that might be a good thing, who knows? The other thing is, like, I mean, again, same as with Anne, I've kind of, your jewellery's been on my radar for years, and it's extremely impactful visually, that, and you kind of look at the pieces and go, oh yeah, that's one of Graham's. There's no other person who would have made it. It's partly, I guess, the black and yellow combination that does it. So extremely visually striking. But also when you look at the something like the druzy earrings, there we go, druzy earrings. It's very different materials. So we've got rubies, we've got the druzy, we've got yellow gold, we've got Tahitian pearls. And somehow there's a lot going on, but it's very grounded because it's a repetition of the same shape. Round stones, round druzy, round pearls, round jump rings, even if you want to count the functional parts of the design. And it's detailed, but it's very easily wearable, I think. And because of...
For me, it's incredibly important that something is very wearable. And a big part of creating pieces of jewellery, regardless of what it is simplicity for me. And I like the materials to actually speak for themselves, rather than relying on excess details or so. So I like to keep the forms very simple, but just use visually strong combinations of color or texture as well,
Yeah.
which these earrings, I think, sort of do that. And
Yeah. They do all of that. And there's we talked about this weeks ago, I think. There's something to be said for just sticking to one shape, repeating it, keeping it simple, but still making a piece that's, you're not going to find that a second time. It's, you know,
sure.
It's
and most of the things which I actually end up making, I do make by hand, and even if I am making something with principally the same design, there's always going to be some detail that is different about it.
yeah.
And again, that pleases me as a maker, so that I don't get bored of just repeating the thing over and over and over again. And it
Yeah.
also means that the client has something that's it has an imprint of the human touch, which I think that's important.
Yeah, and especially because we are all making a huge effort or putting a huge effort into making these pieces. So, you know, you don't want to make the same thing over and over again and then 10 people walk around with kind of a replica of something.
Yeah.
My other, and I've been banging on about this for forever, by the way. My other favourite piece of yours is the brooch, the big silicon centerpiece, and the diamond on the side. And I know you mentioned graphic design before, and I've been trying to come up with ways of describing this and failing miserably, but there's a sort of graphic design line element in this, and I may be totally off the mark here, but the silicon itself has got all those, you know, lines going across it this way, that way, or the other way. But again, by having the circle around it, by repeating it with having a round diamond, and the only other thing that kind of references the silicon is the texture and the square, actually. It's a strong piece, but quite easily wearable. And
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, when I first came across silicon, there was an immediate sort of wow factor, and I was like, I had no idea what that was, and I just sort of thought it's exactly like looking at maybe something like a snowflake through a microscope, or just an intensely magnified something or other.
yeah,
And I just felt completely driven to use it. And in combination with gold, I just think it's such a beautiful contrast. And adding a little diamond in there somewhere also just adds it lifts everything else. The combination of the three materials, I think, is just lovely.
yeah, and it sparkles, which can't be a bad thing. I mean, the other thing
Well,
I keep thinking, sorry, when I look at it is, you have all the basic geometric shapes in there. So we've got the circle, we've got the square. I'm sure we'll find a triangle somewhere, and maybe I want to see Bauhaus references everywhere, but I'm seeing them in here. But at the same time, it's still very sort of natural looking is the wrong word, but it's not too formal. There's a wildness about it. Maybe that's so.
yeah, well, I mean, I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, so you know, I think there will always be references to landscapes of Scotland, I guess, and I've been living in cities for the past 30 years or so, so there's a combination of both things going on there. But when you're mentioning about the silicone and the way that it catches the light, it's when somebody actually wears this and there's movement there, that's when it really comes alive, and you need to see it moving, and then it just dances all about it. Amazing. Love it.
Yeah, no, and I have tried it on, and I will confirm all of that. It's absolutely amazing. So in terms of sort of the materials you work with, are there any firm favorites, or is it just, you're happy to hit any metal with a big hammer?
It's probably changing from week to week, month to month. The silicon has been a favorite of mine for quite some time. I kind of get excited by all sorts of stones, and I've got absolutely loads, some of which I've had for many years, and they will be made into something eventually, but they're just still waiting for that to happen. But no, I'm completely fascinated by stones. I just love them.
Yeah. Is that what starts off the design process as well then? Is that very much looking at a stone and going, right, that's definitely a ring?
Yeah, I mean, when I go to gem fairs and we're just looking at, literally millions of different stones, it will be the pieces which jump out at you that will quite often actually generate the idea. And I'm quite happy to be led by the stones themselves, rather than actually designing something and looking for the stone to fit the design.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I work quite intuitively, so I'm quite happy to work with the materials, and if something changes along the way in the process of making, I don't have a problem with that, and it's quite fluid. So I quite like that working.
I can very much relate to that, because I find I can see better in 3D, if that makes sense. So rather than sketching out the final shape of the ring shank, it's much easier to bend up a piece of wire and silver sample, for instance, and just see where it goes. And if it changes, great. Why not?
Yep.
I mean, it might be
Happy
for the best, who knows? Yeah, exactly. Right. Thank you very much. I think because we were talking about gemstones as well, we're going to look at a few more of your pieces now, and there are some really lovely ones there. Promise. That was Graham. Thank you very much. And we've got Emily coming up next. Hello.
Hello.
How are you? You're very,
good, thank
very
you.
nice
How are you?
jewellery. I'm all right. Your jewellery is lovely, by the way. Thank you for letting me have some of yours. So I think, because that's really the start of everything is always interesting, I think. So how did jewellery making come about?
It was quite similar to Graham, really, always knowing that I was going to be going and doing some sort of art study and making. I was always making things, even from when I was a tiny tot. If I could pick something up and glue it together, I was happy. So it was when I was getting towards sort of A-level and foundation, I was doing a lot more sculptural work, and then I discovered the metal workshop whilst I was at foundation course, and started doing all sorts of bending and bashing and creating sort of mad sculptures out of copper and things like that. But when it came to studying for a degree, I always felt that sculpture was quite, it's quite, it's sort of like, don't touch the artwork, don't touch the sculpture. It's quite, standoffish.
Yeah.
Whereas I really enjoy, the way something feels and the way the materials feel and textures, and the weight of things,
And I guess in jewellery making, you're not creating for an audience you don't know, but you're creating for a client. So the person it's going to go to, who's going to wear it, which makes it much more personal than, say, a sculpture that is somewhere in a museum or in a park somewhere.
Yeah, and it's that thing of being able to take something with you and show it off, and
oh god, yes.
And also the materials that you get to use in jewellery, wonderful gemstones and things like that, totally out of bounds for larger projects, the monetarily wise, whereas creating miniature sculptures is probably sort of the way I see it, really.
Yeah, I think best example for that is probably the mandarin garnet and aquamarine ring I've got in the gallery, and we've got a little video of that, and you can see kind of I would call it quietly sculptural, because when you put it on, what you can see is the stones, and the color combination is amazing. They're fantastic stones. You've got the color difference between the 18 yellow gold top and the sterling silver on the bottom of the setting there. But as you move your hand, or as you look at it more closely, it's not just a ring shank holding stones up. It's much more than that. It's a piece, and it makes sense in itself. Does that kind of, am I reading it right? Put it that way.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things. Although I am creating a small sculpture, it does have to work with the body, and it has to sit right on the finger. It has to feel right. Has to be ergonomic, and the stones are part of that story, but I don't want it just to be about the stones. It's about the entire piece.
Yeah. And that again means it's about making it. It's not just, oh yes, here's some gemstones and somehow they need to be mounted. It doesn't matter, it's all about the gemstones, but it's also about the metalwork. And I think that runs through your work somehow. So when we look at the sapphire necklace, for instance, that's black sapphire, yellow diamond there, handmade clasp, but also a handmade chain, and it flows into one another. And the clasp is a functional piece. Normally that would be at the back of the neck. You'd have a pendant from a chain. But in this case, the clasp is so much more. It's functional. Yes, it holds the chain together, but it's also the centerpiece. And I really like that. I like the attention to the mostly overlooked bits.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of it. I think even if you've got a chain where the clasp is at the back, it's important that other people can see it. So it's not just you, and it's not just about the functionality. Of course, it has to work, but it needs to be beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit like having a brooch back that has, I don't know, stone set in it, or that someone's taken care to make,
Yeah.
or I don't know, hinged bangle where the hinge is, you know, beautifully done, and you've added a little bit extra on the clasp there. But I really like this whole kind of one flowing into the other, and creating a piece where functionality is also very pretty. I mean, if I say so
Yes,
myself.
yeah, it's creating that, you know, it's off because I use a lot of asymmetry in my work, but there still needs to be a balance. It can go very wrong. It can look wrong quite easily. So there's a quite fine line between getting that balance right, looking right, and it working.
So how does the design process work? Do you start with a stone, or do you start with an idea? Or what? Tell me.
A mixture of both, really. Again, probably, you know, I love going to big gem fairs and you see all sorts of stones, and there are just some that leave you cold and others that are quite, ooh, what's that? And it's often, and I often find I'm going, ooh, what's that? The ones that the stone dealer is putting away and going, oh, you don't want to look at that. I'm going, no, that looks interesting. Bring that forward. Let me have a look at that. It's got something unusual about it. It's not the run of the mill.
Yeah.
Again, you know, adding those bits of interest into each individual piece. You know, we're all individuals, so there should be something unique and individual about the pieces that we are drawn to and choose.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I mean, that again moves into the other thing that you do that not many goldsmiths would probably touch, is the stone cutting or stone carving. And I have a brooch from you, which we'll see that one later, which has got carved jet set into it, and that's done by you. And you're doing more of that, right?
Yes, I am doing more of it. It's been a perfect time during the lockdown to actually spend a bit more time doing those things. Again, it's about creating the flow between the metalwork and the gemstone. You know, it being about the entire piece, not just like there's the metal holding the stone. It's much more sculptural kind of way of thinking.
I'm incredibly excited to see that new work. What else sort of is? I mean, we've talked about gemstones and we've talked about the metal and we talked about bashing the metal into submission. But any important that. Any favorite materials or anything where you would say, oh God, if I only, you know, the rest of my life I'd have to spend working with, then it would be this. It's not a fair question, I know.
No. Metal, gold. Because it's just the wonderful thing about gold as well. It's kind of infinitely recyclable. It's a wonderful material. And then gemstones. Oh, either aqua or tourmaline. Tourmaline from the breadth of colour that you can get.
Oh God, yes. And aqua for the beautiful sea-coloured wonderfulness of it.
And wonderful inclusions that you can get in there. It just, you know.
From a setting point, though, they scare the living daylight out of me. Oh well. So you are doing a Great Northern Contemporary Craft Fair at the moment. Is that started today, didn't it?
Yeah, so started today, and you can go onto their website and browse through 160 different makers, and then it runs until next Friday. But it's quite good because from there you can see a small gallery of work, and then go to the maker's website to see more. So it's kind of a nice way to find out about other makers. And
Yeah, and great.
Well,
The organisers have always been amazing with their selection, I think.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
and that runs all this week, right?
yes, till Friday 31st.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much, Emily. And we're going to leave you with some more of Emily's pieces. I think first up is the brooch I was talking about earlier, so make sure you see that. Right, and next up we've got Chris. Hello, Chris. Hello. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Aha, hello.
How are you?
I'm all right.
Hello?
So, can you, yes, excellent. Chris is
Yeah,
breaking up. No, can't hear Chris.
I'm sorry, I'm switching over my Wi-Fi if it's...
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yay, hello.
Sorry, our Wi-Fi just shut down, I think. Switched over.
Well, I mean, come on, it's, you know, it's a live event. Why wouldn't it
Yeah,
happen?
yeah. Why wouldn't it?
Excellent. So, Chris, because I don't want people confused, you and Emily share a studio, a home, and a dog, but are clearly two
Yes, and
very separate entities making-wise.
yeah, I just noticed myself Zoom bombing as well. I had to duck out just then. We're in the same studio at the moment, so and I saw myself in the background, so I've been sat on the floor for the last 5 minutes.
We are, of course, all
but yeah,
professionals here.
so we are all professionals here. We met on the circuit, so we met as jewelers and sort of orbited around that scene together.
But your work is very different from each other's, I think. So,
yeah.
I mean, we might as well start with the most obvious, which is the Monolith Rings. There's one there. Here's one I prepared earlier. And that's the one with the mirror-cut rose quartz that I've got in the gallery here. And what I very much like about them is that they don't really need someone to wear them to look good. So I put them in the cabinet and boom, there's a thing there and it looks great, and there's nothing else needed, which, how has that ever happened before, you know? And it's, you know, most jewellery will need someone to wear it to bring it to life, whereas your rings are quite happy, and then the wearer needs them, if that makes sense. And I think that's...
That's when I started making them, I wanted to make something that was strong and would, well, literally stand alone. You know, hence the name, like the idea of a monolith. It works with a monolith means single stone, usually meaning standing stone. So I wanted that reflected that, just the strength and the that it would last forever, unchanging. So that's what I was thinking when I was making them rings.
Yeah.
So is that first designing them rings? Well, they've developed a lot over the time, over the years.
Yeah, and you can see, you can see that because you've already got that kind of how, you know, construction is really important in your work. I think how it's made, how it fits together, and that's already evident when you look at the shank of the monolith ring. You've got the ridges from the draw plate.
Yeah.
The way you've got that extra little angle on the bottom. And then when you go into the cluster rings, like the big rutilated quartz and aquamarine cluster, there's similar elements there, but it has evolved, I think.
Yes. So with the monolith rings, everything was inspired by minerals or crystal structures. So, you know, it being single stone, and then the shape of the shank is inspired by a determination of a tourmaline crystal. So not a square, not a straight cut off, but a little angle and then a bigger straight. And the striations were inspired by etched tourmaline crystals that have that pattern. Also, with the ridges, if it's flat, if the sides are flat and polished, in the earlier versions, the whole ring seemed very ethereal, which is not the idea I was going for. You know, it would look like it was a hovering stone, but with the matte and the ridges, there'll always be a highlight and a shadow, so you can always really focus on the
Yeah.
obviously oxidize helps as well with that.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, you've mentioned minerals a couple of times now. Do you start with the stone, or do you start with sort of something else when you're designing?
Certainly, the monolith rings, I'll start with a stone. The more complex the intergrown, what I call them, the cube cluster rings. I tend to go out and try and find a certain kind of stone for that. It only works with the very geometric stones. So a combination. Mostly though, as I said, you know, when you see a stone, you'll see and you'll immediately have an idea in your head that that's going to be a ring of this kind. So
yeah. And how did jewellery making come about?
I'm going to mention minerals again. Minerals first. I wanted to be a geologist. I'm a failed geologist, I guess. Frustrated geologist. I've always loved geology and the earth and the story of the earth. So I've only realised, like, years later, that minerals encapsulate that entire story, especially with a rutilated quartz or a dendrite in a opal. The time it takes to form that stone really tells the story of the earth. So, oh, sorry, I'm getting off topic here.
No, it's totally fine.
I failed geology. Oh, I failed to start geology, and then didn't know what I was going to do. And I've always, just like making, I've always had things in my hands, making, collecting, things like that. And then really stumbled into jewelry making through a mixed craft course, which then became metalwork and then became jewelry and then that, because of the jewelry traditional use of gemstones, it all sort of came good in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it
You know,
makes. Sorry, carry on.
sorry, yeah, no, I was finished.
No, I was just going to say it makes sense because I mean, if you're doing jewellery and if you're hand making, you need to know your chemistry and you need to know your physics and you need to know your maths and you need to know about gemstones really, because otherwise it's a fairly tricky job to do. So
Yeah, it's a lot of guesswork if you don't know them. Sorry, I was going to say it's a lot of guesswork if you don't know the science and the maths.
Yeah, not fun at all if you don't. So how does I mean, what else influences your designs? Obviously, gemstones.
Yeah, the act of making is an influence as well. You know, I think a lot of the other jewelers here have said that they do a lot of designing on the bench. So it all starts at the bench for me. I maybe do a little sketch here or mock up some things, but really I just go make the stone setting first, and then you know, see how, if it's one of the intergrown pieces, really you know, suck it and see sort of designing that you cut a bit off, and if it were getting a bit closer, almost like a ceramicist work, or like a ceramic sculpture, ceramic sculptor. You know, you just take up a bit and you, okay, done that wrong, and put it back, and there's no grand plan to start with.
Well, it's almost
I've always
like
found
teasing. Sorry.
Yeah, I've always found certainly at university, going back, if I designed something completely before I made it, it would be disappointing making, because you already know the end of the story. You know the story, why you know, like, and it. So I like to keep myself guessing, I guess.
Yeah, and there's fun in teasing out the design out of the metal as you're doing it and kind of see it come to life at the same time. And we're gonna look at some more of your work now, I think. Thank you very much. And we've got more cluster rings to show, which is very exciting because I love them. Thank you. Right, and that was everyone. Thank you so much for being here and talking about, I mean, the only important subject in the world, really. I think what was very clear from that is how much everyone loves making and how much kind of people's personality goes into each piece, which I think that shows in the work very much. So if you want to see the pieces in person, the gallery is open from Wednesday to Saturday, 11 to 5, and by appointment as well, because I practically live here and I have no life. We've got, I mean, we already heard some people have got upcoming shows. So Anne is doing Made Makers. Chris and Emily are doing the Great Northern Contemporary Craft Fair. And Chris, Graham, Anne and me are going to be part of Goldsmith Fair this September. Which is going digital for the first time, so we are all very excited. And I think that's it from us today. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you to the 5 of them for being here tonight. That's really great. And hopefully see you soon in real life. Thank you.